Hi, my name is Bastian. I'm an Asana consultant at i.DO. We are an Asana solutions partner, and our job is to help you deploy Asana. We do audits, we do workshops, we do trainings. What you are about to look at is an actual Asana training that I had with one of our clients. They agreed that we record and share that training so that others can see what a training looks like, what an Asana actual training looks like. We don't always train people specifically on My Tasks and Inbox. That's the topic today. We usually have a basic training that contains a small part about My Task and Inbox, but those two views are so important that I really wanted to do something specifically. It's also a good opportunity to, again, show you what a training looks like when someone from our team helps you discover Asana. Enjoy. How's everybody? Excited to talk about Asana for 1 hour. I actually used Asana to organize my wedding. That was a very well organized wedding. I also used Asana to manage a couple of businesses. And as you can imagine, I have a pretty big My Task view. I have a couple of notifications every day. So I did manage to create some routines I want to share with you today. I will talk about Inbox. I will talk about My Task afterwards. I prepared some speeches around the questions that you ask in the form that you filled in. Feel free to ask any question that you have. You can open your mic, ask a question, and everything is recorded. I will give you access to the recording afterwards. I want to start by talking about the pyramid of clarity. I don't know if you know what the pyramid is. That's basically a concept that Asana invented to explain how the tool works. The goal of the pyramid is to explain that everything relies on the tasks. Every single task assigned to someone with a due date is then placed into a project. Those projects are usually placed into portfolios, and those three layers of work are connected to the goals and the mission of the company. So as you might imagine, everything relies on the tasks. That's really the foundation. So we really, as a team, we really have to make sure that we do the work that is assigned to us. Sometimes that also means assigning to someone else, delegating that work, sending that work back to the right person if it doesn't belong in our My Task view. But if it is in our My Task, we are supposed to do the work, and we are supposed to respect the due date that was placed on the task. So I just wanted to start by showing you the pyramid of clarity. Let's talk about the inbox. So you all know Asana already. You all know the interface. I'm not going to go through the interface again. The Asana inbox is basically the email inbox specifically for Asana related things. This is where everything related to Asana will go. The email you receive from Asana contain exactly the same thing as the Asana inbox. However, the inbox is easier to use, it's more powerful, and it's more user-friendly. One of the benefits of the inbox is that it's going to group things together. It's going to group things that go together. For example, there we have an example, actually this one. Lauren liked a comment and also posted a comment herself. If you kept the email enabled in Asana, you would potentially have two different emails. In that case, it was grouped together. And that concept happens throughout the inbox. You're going to save time by letting the inbox group things together. Just like any email inbox, the main feature that you really want to use is the archive button. You really want to be using this archive button you have on every single notification. In my case, I'm actually using now the keyboard shortcut E, that's the letter E. If you use E, that's going to archive the message that you have your focus on. The goal of the inbox, just like the email inbox, is to empty everything. And it's actually possible. My inbox is empty almost every single day, just like my email inbox, actually. And you have so much clarity when you finally manage to empty everything from the inbox, because you know that you are on top of everything. If you don't archive things, it's going to be really hard to remember where you were the last time you came. You're going to be scrolling down. You're going to try to remember the last thing that you've seen. It's just going to consume so much energy. I really suggest you archive things all the way to the top. If you want to use the inbox today, one thing you can do is go to the three-dot menu and archive everything, especially if you've read your emails up until today. you might want to start from scratch, archive everything in the Asana inbox, disable the email notification. I'm going to show you how to do this in a second, and then start fresh and go to the inbox every day and try to archive everything that you've read. I'm just going to show you how to disable emails. If you go through the three-dot menu right there, if you click on Manage Notifications, you're going to end up in your profile settings, and that's the second tab about notification. That's where you can disable emails. My suggestion is to actually untick all the boxes. You don't really want to get emails anymore. Maybe this one, daily summary, is a good one when you start using the Asana inbox, so that it can remind you to go to Asana. Otherwise, you really want to disable everything and you want to read what's happening from within Asana itself. A lot of notifications are coming from this very last box you have at the bottom. This is really one box you want to untick right now if you can. What you have here are the project notification. That's actually the default settings when you are added on a project and you have been added to a ton of projects. And you are probably notified every single day of tasks added by other people in the company. It's usually pretty useless to see what tasks other people create. There's only a handful of workflows where it does make sense to be notified of new tasks being created, but in most cases, it doesn't make sense. So you should really disable this as the default. However, in some cases, when you do want to be notified, you can always go into the project and change the settings for that project specifically. But overall, you want that default to change. If you untick the box now, it doesn't apply to all the projects you were already invited on. So you really want to go into the Manage Individual Project and then look at all the projects you are a member of and untick that box. It might take you a few minutes, get a coffee and just click, click, click. All the way to the bottom of the list. And again, the goal is to not be notified of new tasks being added every single time someone adds a new task to a project. Yes, question.
Is it possible to get a summary, not to email, but to Asana?
A summary of what exactly?
Daily summary that was in the settings.
I don't think that's possible. I haven't had that thing enabled for a long time. I don't think that's possible.
Okay.
You can potentially recreate a report by using the search. You can find every task created within the last 24 hours that were assigned to you. You can play with the different filters and get some kind of a summary, but I think otherwise you do have to go through the inbox entirely. If anyone has the answer to this, feel free to jump in.
Bastiaan?
Yeah.
We have a best practice. So for Zendesk onboardings, we use Asana in combination with our customers. So for our project managers, it's relevant to have at least for our customer projects, to have the task edit notification. Okay. Because our customers, sometimes they forget to assign a task to the project manager, and then we will miss some work that needs to happen for that specific project. So I think for us in that case, only in that case, it's a best practice for us to be mentioned about a new task added to that customer project.
I agree, and I think to me that's one of the only use cases where it does make sense to be notified, and we have exactly the same thing when we are within the client's account. We want to be notified about things they do create. But if they create a couple of tasks, they're going to be grouped together in one block, and you can archive everything with a single click or the letter E. Thanks, Thomas. While we are in the inbox, make sure that the expand button is enabled. It has to be blue. That's really important. If you look at the screen, if I click that button again, you're going to see weird stuff happening. You're going to see half of the content disappearing. The reason is if you do not expand, you only see the one latest activity on each item. But sometimes you do want to see everything that happened. You don't want to have to go into each task and scroll down to see the latest update. So make sure that this expand button is enabled. To finish up on the inbox, I know that someone in the form they submitted told me that when they have to do something on a task, they usually keep that notification around in the inbox. The problem when you do this is that your inbox becomes a secondary to-do list. So you end up with your My Task view, you end up with your inbox, and you end up with your email. And you basically have 3 different lists. And when you have 3 lists, it's really hard to have a unified view. It's really hard to decide what to do first. That's why in my case, when I have an email and I can't do something right away, I usually create a task for that email and I archive the email. For the inbox, it's a bit different. If someone tells me, can you please do this in a comment, either I assign the task to myself, and if I do, then that task will show up in the My Task view, or I ask them to create a task for me, like a second task or a subtask or something that's being dependent on the main task. But I make sure that an actual task represents that piece of work assigned to me so that it can go into the My Task view. And then I'll archive that specific notification. There's one use case also, let's say Lauren completed that task and it's a bit weird. I'm not sure it's completely done and I want to check tomorrow. What I can do in that case is go into the 3-dot menu and click on Create Follow-up Task. It's going to create a task assigned to me that mentions the task that we see on the right-hand side, and I can place a date on this specific task. So it allows me to archive that notification as well as having my own task in the My Task view. So it's another way to be able to, again, archive everything that I see in the inbox. And the goal is really to go all the way to the top and archive everything that you see. Do you have any question on the inbox?
Yes.
Go ahead.
What's your advice on the way how you sort your inbox, newest or relevant? Because there's like the new option, you can sort your inbox on the most relevant item as well, I guess.
I usually sort by newest. Otherwise, I actually tried the relevance for a couple of days, and it was a bit weird because the same items stayed at the top and new stuff were going below. And my inbox had a little dot displayed, and I would go into that inbox and I would see stuff I've seen already, and I would have to scroll down to find what's new. And I'm not even sure how the relevance is being rated, and maybe it doesn't align with the way I see things. So I usually think the newest is better. I try to have my inbox empty almost at all times. So whatever sort you decide, if you can manage to keep everything empty all the time, it doesn't really make a difference. You have to keep it empty as often as possible. Regarding the filters, I haven't talked about this, but if you want to filter down to something specifically, make sure to always go back to the old filter as often as possible. Otherwise, you're going to miss things. And I know that some people, they have so many notifications, they only filter by @mentioned, and they only look at this. And to me, that's a very dangerous situation because you're going to miss a ton of stuff. If someone asks you something without mentioning you, you're going to miss this. You're going to miss the answers given by others to a question. It's just, you don't want to go down that rabbit hole. So if you do have to filter, it's okay to filter sometimes, but you should always go back to the old filter to see everything else that was filtered out.
Yeah, from time to time I use the filters if I'm like overwhelmed in my inbox, because it can happen that there are like a few days, I know it's not a best practice, but sometimes it happens, and then I start with like, okay, which items are assigned to me? I try to read them, archive them, and then I check like all the filters, and then I end up with like everything unfiltered again, and then it's like easier to manage my notification inbox. It helps me when I'm overwhelmed with the inbox notifications.
Exactly. Another way when you are overwhelmed is to bookmark some of the notifications so that they go into the bookmarks tab and you can archive that notification. just in case you really want to reach that inbox 0, but there's still a couple of stuff you want to look at. You can bookmark them. You just have to remember to go to the bookmarks tab from time to time. Any other question on the inbox? All good? Cool. So now my favorite topic of all times, the My Task view. That's an amazing view. That view is showing everything assigned to you across the different projects. If it's not in Asana, it doesn't exist. If you want me to do something, you have to put it in Asana and you have to assign it to me. If you tell me to do something in a comment, it doesn't work. You have to assign a task to me. And the reason is I really want to have that unique list where I can see everything assigned to me. What you have on the screen is the default setup that you get when you join Asana. So the names might be a bit different. I think the upcoming used to be something like do soon or something. They have different variations, but basically that's recently assigned today, upcoming, and later. You get those sections if you choose to group by custom sections. So in case you don't have those, that might be because you have a different group by that applies on the right. I always suggest to work with the custom sections to be able to really decide how you want to organize everything. I know some people like to group by due date. The problem I see with this is that something might be late, but might not be as important as something that is due tomorrow, but is very important. And the problem by sorting by due date is that you can't play with the priorities anymore. You only play with the dates, and that might be a bit dangerous sometimes. So I do like to group by custom sections. And in addition to grouping by custom sections, I usually like to sort by due date within the sections themselves. That way, anything overdue really goes to the top. So we have recently assigned today, upcoming, later. That's a pretty decent setup. You can use that setup for a long time, especially if you have a very low volume of tasks. In my case, I quickly started to customize the different sections. My current setup looks like this. I have top priority, I have important, I have secondary, and I have due later. And I also have top priority above recently assigned. So why do I do it this way? I decide to organize stuff based on priority because I think the due date is only part of the information that I need. The priority is also an important part, and I want to be able to see together everything that's a top priority, whatever the due dates are. And if I have a couple of those, I then want to be able to sort by due date. That's why I have a setup like this. I also move the top priority above recently assigned because otherwise, especially on very busy days where people assign you a lot of things, you're going to spend your entire day triaging your view if you have recently assigned at the top. So you really want to be able to see your top priorities first and then see anything else that you have to triage second. And making that change really has had a lot of impact for me. Any question on the sections? All good? Cool. In addition to those sections, one thing you should really do is set up two different automation, two different rules. If you go into customize and then you go into rules, the first one you really want to create is this one. I'm going to create it for you. Create a custom rule. The trigger is due date is approaching, and the action is move to a section recently assigned. So I want things to move from whatever section they were in into the recently assigned section whenever the task is due. The reason is if something is due in a couple of days or a couple of weeks, very often I'm going to place that task into the later section at the bottom. And I want to forget about that task. But I want that task to come back up when the due date is up, on the exact date that task is due. But because I don't have a today section anymore, I only have top priority, important, secondary. I do not want to send that task to the top priority section because maybe it's not a top priority. I want that task to go back again into recently assigned. And then what I do is every morning I walk into the office, I look at the My Task view, and I try to triage everything that is within recently assigned. And sometimes something that was sent the same day into recently assigned gets pushed down into later again with a due date in the future. And sometimes I have stuff looping like this for a couple of weeks until it gets done. So that's the first rule you should really consider having. The main benefit of this is the ability to really place into later anything that is due later. The second rule I have is this one. Add rule, create custom rule. Task is no longer blocked. It's here. Move into recently assigned. When you're using dependencies and one of your tasks is blocked by someone, it doesn't make any sense to keep that task around. You don't want to have to look at that task every single day. It's blocked by someone, it's blocked by something. You just have to wait for that blockage to be gone. So what I do in my case is that anything that is blocked goes into the later section, even without a date. As soon as the blocking task is completed or deleted or the dependency is removed, that task will go back into recently assigned. So again, every morning I have tasks that were unblocked the day prior, and I can decide if I want to do them right away, if I want to do them later, change the date, delegate, whatever I have to do. So that one is very important. It requires, however, to set up dependencies properly. So if I open a task, any task, you have dependencies here. You don't have to wait for your project manager to set up tasks for you. This is something you can do just for yourself. If your task is blocked by someone else, don't hesitate to create that dependency. Something I do very often is that I anticipate the next task I'm going to have to do, and I block myself. Those next tasks are blocked by the first task I have to do. So I have like a snowball effect. Every time I complete something, the next task that is already assigned to me rises to the top, and when I complete that one, the next one rises to the top again. I have a system basically sending me tasks every time I complete something, and that also works pretty well. Any question on the automations?
Yes. Is there a way to make a difference between I set a due date and someone sets a due date? Because what now happens, I have this due date that says if something is due in 3 days, move it to a certain section or whatever it moves. But if other people set priorities, like if I set priority and push something to later, I don't want triggers to run. But if somebody else sets priority, maybe I do a due date, maybe I want a specific rule set to run.
Yeah, you can't target specifically who changed the due date. However, you can use custom fields to do this. That means if someone changes the due date, you need to define a custom field that could hold that information somehow.
Because we have a lot of templates and automation stuff that Thomas built that sets due dates when you create a project. But then if those hit my rules, everything goes everywhere. That's the reason. But if it's not possible, then I just have to, tweak the rules.
Yeah, in that case, the automation can look at the actual due date and not look at who changed the due date specifically.
Okay, thanks.
So as you've seen, I have a system where I send a lot of stuff in the future. I change the due date. I push things back a lot. They go into later and they come back to me. So every single day I have a ton of stuff coming back and I send them away, or I do them, or triage. I have a lot of work to maintain everything, but to me that's working pretty well. But the thing is, I'm changing dates very, very often, and I'm pushing things very, very often. And I realize that I'm always pushing things by the same amount of days. That could be tomorrow, 3 days, 10 days from now, or 1 month. I always do almost the same thing. So at one point I realized maybe there's a way to make it easier for me to push something by 10 days, for example. And this is when I developed a system that I call the snoozing. So let me show you how it looks. First, I created a section like this to separate from the actual section I'm using. And then I create a section called snooze and day. and I link a rule specifically to that section. So I go into the automation, rules, add rule, create a custom rule. When a task is added to the snooze section, what I do is two things. I change the due date by 10 days. So I add 10 days to the already existing due date. And I also move into the later section, move to later. So what it does is this. You go into your My Task. Let's say it's time to update your goals. You don't have time right now. You know that in about 10 days, you're going to be less overwhelmed. You're going to have time in 10 days. Instead of manually changing the date, trying to pick up 10 from the calendar, it's a lot of work. What I do is this. I click on the section selector, click on snooze 10 day, and it does everything for me. It goes into later, changes the date, and disappears from my view. I have sections for tomorrow, next Monday, 3 days, 10 days, 1 month, and 3 months. So at the bottom of that view, I have all of those sections, and I'm constantly sending stuff away at different times in the future. This has worked really well for me, but it does work if you have the ability to change dates, if you are allowed to change dates. And sometimes, depending on the company rules that you have in place, you can't just change dates. You have to justify and explain and use the comments. But for anything that you are the only one assigned on, and if you can decide on the date, that's a pretty good system. Okay, let me check my notes, see if I forgot anything. Yeah, I wanted to show you. Yeah, Thomas?
Yeah, question. In this setup, if I assign a task to you, so someone else is assigning a task to you, in which section will you see? Because by default, there is something like to triage, or what is it called again? But I don't
assign.
Or in yours. Okay, this one. So you will see it over there if someone else is assigning a task to you.
Yes, so we all have that very special section. This is where everything lands when it's assigned to you. However, there's a system where allowing you to target a specific section. And this is, for example, something we've done with one of our assistants. When I assign something to my assistant, I don't want her to decide if it's a top priority or if it's important. I decide the priority. In order to do this, we created a dropdown called target section. So we have in target section, it's a drop down, and we have top priority, important, secondary. And we asked her to create a rule that says, if I'm assigned on a task and it's a top priority, it should go into my top priority section. And we asked her and other people in the team to set up the same system so that we can decide where the tasks go, and she doesn't have to decide for herself what the priority is. I want to show you one last thing. I did something a couple of days ago. I was, as you might know, if I go into a project, for example, this one, as you might know, you now have the ability to customize the tabs at the top. And you can see that there's a second list here. There's a GAN view, there's a dashboard. I can remove this one. I can rename the tab. I can really do whatever I want. But this doesn't exist in My Tasks yet. So I found a way to make it work with My Task. What I did was this. I created a project called My Tasks. I'm going to put the fake username in there. It's a private project. Then within the My Task view, I created a rule that says create custom rule. When a task is added to My Task, I want to add the task to the My Task project. So every time someone assigns something to me, it goes into the My Task project. And then what I did was this. I'm just going to look for My Tasks. And I started to create tabs in there. So I said, okay, the first tab will show anything that is incomplete, assigned to me and it's actually sorted by due date. So I can call this one like everything. And then I can create another one that says overdue. So I want to see everything incomplete assigned to me that is due before today. And that's anything overdue. So every time someone assigns something to me, it comes here automatically. So if I click on a new task, review project strategy, assign to myself, the rule will trigger and it will add the task here, and it will display in the right tab. You can see this one displays the task, this one doesn't because it's not yet overdue. And I created for myself a lot of different tabs. I can actually show you how it looks. Actually, I can't, I have private stuff in there, sorry. But because we have priorities, we have task types, we have a lot of different custom fields, I was able to create different tabs showing a subset of the data that I need to play with. And I think that's an interesting way of dealing with your tasks. In addition to the My Task view, sometimes when you want to look at something specifically, like only the overdue tasks, that could be the way to go. Have a second project where you send everything assigned to you.
Are you able to filter on other projects as well over there?
Yeah, you just have to use the quick filters available, and you don't have anything around project yet. But what I've done in my case, I'm just going to take a screenshot to show you. That's my own My Task. You can see everything that's a top priority, anything overdue, and then I have a breakdown based on the type of task. So if I want to look at all the quotes, all the invoices I'm assigned on, I can go into my own personal project and I will see all the invoices I'm assigned on. So if you can replace belonging to a project with a custom field, then you should be able to build a system like this.
Bastian, I've got a question there. A part of our task as well, so we collaborate with end users, our clients, and we assign them tasks with due dates as well. But of course, if they don't respect the due dates, if they don't react upon it, it's part of our job as well to chase them. So how do I get that organized that I can see the tasks assigned to my customers that I want to chase, for which I want to chase them?
One way would be to go through the search, click on advanced search, and if you add some filters there at the bottom, you can say things like people assigned by, you can type me, and you can add stuff like incomplete and due within the last like 1,000 days. That's going to give you all the tasks assigned to you to other people that are due in the past. And if you sort by due date, you can basically see anything that's overdue that you were the one assigning that task to someone. And you can filter even more by choosing the assignees or other filters as well.
Would it kind of be possible to include that in the My Tasks as well? Or is it just always on a search base?
Yeah, it's not possible because the My Task only shows stuff assigned to you. As soon as you assign to someone else, it goes away to their My Tasks. The search we have here can, however, be starred. If I click on the star button, that could be assigned by me to others. And then it goes into here. So that's a way of saying it. So you're like one click away from seeing that list again every time you need that list.
I use the widget for that on the homepage.
Oh yeah, good call. You have
task has assigned overdue.
Task have assigned. Exactly, pretty good. Always forget about this one. It's pretty small, but it does the work.
Thank you.
Any other question? So one of you said in the form, how can I see overdue tasks? So the homepage has a My Task widget, And this is where you can quickly see overdue tasks. It's one way to see anything that's assigned to you and overdue. The My Task project I showed you also does the trick. And if you go back to My Task, you can always group by due date if you really want to see anything that's overdue. So there's a couple of ways to see overdue tasks assigned to yourself. Someone else asked what to do when I'm overwhelmed. When you are overwhelmed, my suggestion is to go through the list of tasks and try to triage everything until the recently assigned section is completely empty. If the top priority section is too big, if it's too crowded, you have to triage again and move things down to the bottom, up until the point where you only have like a dozen tasks in the top priority section, and then you can start working. What you can also do when you are overwhelmed is create additional sections. If you don't have enough sections in My Task, you can create temporary sections. For example, if I'm completely overwhelmed, I can have something that says urgent, not important, maybe later, not sure. And you can go through the list and really triage stuff until you get some clarity again and until you are able to work again clearly.
So like first doing the triage and then solving tasks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think if you don't triage, you have no idea if something very important sits in the list. So you really have to go through that list at least once and triage everything properly.
What's your step-by-step process if you come back from 2 weeks holiday and you didn't do anything in Asana? What do you do on your first day, Bastien?
I do look at Asana during the holidays, but I would go. So I basically have 3 channels. I have My Task, Inbox, Email. I usually like to clean one channel entirely before looking at the others. So I usually go through all the emails first, and then I go through all the inbox, and then I go through all the My Tasks. For My Tasks specifically, I try to go through everything. I would use the snooze extensively. So anything that is not super important, I would push by 1 day, 3 days, 7 days, just to take care of that stuff later. I would push a ton of stuff to the upcoming days, just so that I can make sure I only have a handful of things remaining at the top of the list. And I would, in that case, go through the list probably 2 or 3 times until the point I do have reasonable sized sections.
Okay.
Thank you.
A question
yeah.
about managing the inbox. How long do you reckon you would spend every day, like doing those, like assessing the task and reorganizing your task and everything?
I think in my case, the entire routine of keeping My Task and inbox clean takes between half an hour and 1 hour per day. But it does include doing some of the small stuff, like sending one email and then pushing the task 10 days later. That's usually done on the go, like right away. But I spend, I think 1 hour per day doing all of that maintenance, which we were all doing anyway when we had emails all over the place. Triaging everything, takes a lot of time.
Thank you.
Are you telling us, Bastien, that if you can do it in less than 2 minutes, you do it immediately?
Kind of. I think 2 minutes is already a bit too much, but that really depends on how long the list is. If I only have a couple of stuff, I would definitely do those. If I'm completely overwhelmed, I would push something 10 days later, even if it takes 2 minutes, because pushing takes 3 seconds. So I need to save those extra seconds to manage the workload. Before jumping off, if you can just leave me a comment in the chat, let me know if that was useful, if you learned anything specifically useful in your case that I should emphasize the next time I do a training like this. And have a good day and see you around. That's it for the training. I hope that you enjoyed this moment. As a reminder, this is not a regular training, we usually train people on the basics and we include a small part on My Tasks and Inbox. But those two views are so important, it's worth it to spend some more time on them. Make sure to check out some of our other videos, for example, the one that's going to give you a tour of the Asana interface, a 10-minute tour, as well as a very specific one, which is basically me recording myself triaging my tasks view, because sometimes it might be a bit hard to realize what it means to have many tasks come your way on a daily basis and what it means to triaging those tasks. So make sure to check out those two videos as well as the other ones on our YouTube channel. I'll see you around. Have a good, productive day.